the first thing you feel is the chill, the kind of cold that doesn't bite, but clings soft, wet, and bone deep. It's early, earlier than you'd like, earlier than even the birds. Your breath rises like mist in the dim space around you. There's no glass in the window, there's only a wooden shutter, swollen from rain. The floor is packed earth. It's always slightly damp. Your name is unrecorded by history. You are poor. You don't own the land you work. You lease a tulong with a share of the tools, the seed, and even the oxen from a wealthy landowner you may never meet. And though you labor from sunup to sundown, half of everything you produce is not yours. You pull on a coarse tunic wool, homespun, scratchy, it has not been washed in weeks. Laundry is saved for when water is more abundant, and energy less scarce. Your sandals are leather, cracked at the seams. They were handed down from a cousin who lost his foot to infection. You eat something, dry perhaps, some stale bread soaked in wine. Vinegar. There is no breakfast as you know it, just a small mouthful of something to stop the nausea. Then you step outside. The world is already moving. The estate fields stretch beyond the horizon, in undulating browns and yellows. Other tenants, other peasants, are already at work. Bending, sowing, plowing, carrying. There is no privacy in your world, but there is solitude, a kind of quiet rhythm to each day that begins and ends with the soil. You plow the fields with a wooden scratch plow. It doesn't cut deeply, it simply teases the dirt open like a dull comb through tangled hair. Behind it, the oxen move slowly. You guide them with grunts and nudges. They are old. Like everything else, they've seen better days. By mid-morning, the sun has already begun to press down upon you like a stone slab. There is little shade. Trees are too precious, they've long been cut for timber or fuel. Sweat runs into your eyes. You do not wipe it away. You've grown used to the sting. The skin of your hands is rough, peeling, lined like bark. Sometimes, you pause to urinate against a wall or a tree. There is no toilet. There is no break room. And always, in the back of your mind, taxes, the vectigur share of the crop to be handed over. If the yield is poor, if the weather is cruel, if the pests come early, it does not matter. The tax still stands. Shortage is your burden. Abundance is theirs. Lice are constant companions. You feel them move in your tunic as you bend. You try not to scratch, easier to ignore them than draw blood. At midday, there is a pause. You squat under the meager shade of a shed. You chew on something tougher than it should be, perhaps salted olives, a wedge of cheese if you've been lucky recently. You drink water from a ceramic jug that smells faintly of the oil it once carried. Then, back to the fields. In summer, the heat becomes delirious. There is no breeze, only the shimmering dance of air above the earth. In winter, it is the opposite, mud up to your knees, aching joints, wet cloth against cold skin. But you keep moving, because that is what you do. That is what everyone does. At sunset, you walk back. Slower now. Your legs burn, your spine feels brittle. There's a tightness in your shoulders that never leaves. The day's harvest is modest. You hope it's enough. At home, your family waits. Children that are too quiet from hunger. A wife whose face carries the same lines as the land. There's a fire. The smoke curls slowly toward the ceiling and escapes through a hole in the roof. It burns your eyes a little, but it's warm. You eat soup, mostly water, a few beans, a shred of cabbage, maybe a piece of pork rind. It's better than nothing, and sometimes that is enough. Outside, the stars begin to emerge. There are no lamps, no streetlights, only darkness, and the sounds of insects and distant voices. You lie down. The straw mattress is itchy, and there's a small stone under your shoulder that you don't bother to move. Sleep will come quickly. Tomorrow will be the same, and the day after, and the day after that. Such was the rhythm of your life. The Romans built an empire, yes, but it was on backs like yours, quiet, bent, and endless. Now let us leave the countryside behind. Imagine the road to Rome. Long, straight, and worn by countless sandals and wheels. It winds gently through rolling hills and olive groves, eventually giving way to marble, noise, and ambition. This is not the Rome of farmers or laborers. This is the Rome of orators, of politics, of voices that echo in stone halls and private chambers. And in the heart of this world, brilliant, relentless, and ultimately tragic, stood a man named Marcus Tullius. Cicero was born in 106 BCE, not into the nobility, but into a respected family from Marpenima, modest provincial town southeast of Rome. He was what the Romans called a novus homo, new man. One, not born into power, but determined to earn it. Through words, from a young age, Cicero showed a gift. Language, he read deeply, wrote constantly, and trained with Greece's finest philosophers and Rome's sharpest minds. He believed that with enough eloquence, one could sway anyone, even the gods. And so he rose not by sword or wealth, but by tongue. You might picture him pacing a quiet room by lamplight, rehearsing lines for hours, hand gesturing gently through the air as he refined each phrase. His voice was not booming. but measured, clear, persuasive. A stream, not a flood. In court, he became famous for defending men accused of crimes by powerful enemies. He spoke with moral weight and dazzling rhetoric. Even when defending the guilty, he often made them seem noble, even misunderstood. In 63 BCE, Cicero reached the pinnacle. He was elected consul, the highest office in the Republic. Not bad, for a man without noble blood, but with success came enemies. During his consulship, Cicero uncovered a plot of conspiracy led by a disgruntled noble named It was bold, dangerous, and deeply real. Catiline, it seemed, intended to seize power through violence. Cicero acted quickly. He arrested several conspirators and ordered their execution without a trial. The Senate applauded, the people praised him, but Rome always remembers. The executions would haunt Cicero's legacy. Though many believed he had saved the Republic, others whispered that he had acted more like a king than a servant of the law. After his term, power shifted. A man named Julius Caesar began his rise, followed closely by Crassus and Pompey. Together, they formed a political alliance known as the First Triumvirate. Cicero, a firm believer in the Republic, refused to join. And so, he was sidelined. Worse, in 58 BCE, a political and Epiclodius pull, pushed for citing the illegal executions from years before. Cicero fled Rome. His house was destroyed. His name, for a time, was nearly erased. But, like many things in Rome, fortunes changed again. He returned from exile to cheers and celebration. He resumed writing, speaking, advising. Still, the world around him had grown darker, more unstable. The Republic trembled beneath the weight of civil wars. Caesar marched on Rome. Pompey fled. Cicero, torn between loyalty to order and distaste for Caesar, chose poorly. Again, he aligned with Pompey, who was soon defeated. Caesar, however, spared a sign of magnanimity, or perhaps indifference. Cicero lived on, quietly, under Caesar's shadow. But then, the Ides of March, Caesar was dead, stabbed in the Senate by men who feared his growing power. And Cicero saw an opportunity. He threw his support behind the young Octavian, Caesar's heir, believing he could shape the boy into a defender of the old Republic. He also launched a bitter, eloquent campaign of speeches against Mark Antony, Caesar's former ally. These speeches, called the Philippics War, brilliant and dangerous. They mocked Antony, they exposed his flaws, and in doing so, sealed Cicero's fate. When Antony, Octavian, and Lepidus formed the Second Triumph, they compiled a list of enemies to be executed. Cicero's name was at the top. He tried to flee. Some say he made it to the sea. Others say he hesitated, unwilling to die a coward. He was caught, he did not resist. The soldiers severed his head and hands. They were nailed to the rostra in the Forum, the very platform from which he had once stirred crowds. A grim, silent echo of all the words he had ever spoken. But he had the last word. His writings survived. His ideas endured. For centuries, students learned Latin by copying his speeches. His thoughts on justice, on duty, on law, shaped entire civilizations. Marcus Tullius, Cicero, was no emperor, no conqueror, but he was, and remains, the voice of a republic that struggled to survive. As we leave behind the crowded streets and shadowy politics of the Forum, we turn now to something buried, something quiet, something left in the dust of time. Let us explore what remains. Let us drift now into the forgotten corners of the Eternal City. Not into the Colosseum, not the palaces on Palatine Hill, but downward, into neighborhoods long buried beneath centuries of stone and silence. Imagine yourself walking, slowly, along a narrow Roman street. The stone beneath your feet is uneven, polished by time and countless footsteps. The buildings on either side rise high, taller than you expect for the ancient world. 4 stories, 5, sometimes even 6. These are the Insularomen apartment blocks, cramped, flammable, unstable, and home to most of the city's population. The word insula means island, and in a way, each one was an island of lives stacked atop one another, connected by rickety staircases, whispers, and the quiet creak of wood. They were built quickly to house the thousands, no, the hundreds of thousands of Romans who lived not in grandeur, but in necessity. Craftsmen, laborers, porters, scribes, people who served the city, but did not own it. Most insulae were constructed of wood and cheap brick. The lower floors were considered more desirable. They were sturdier, closer to water sources, and slightly cooler in summer. Those who lived near the top had more light, more breeze, but also more danger. The stairs were narrow, the walls thin, and there were no elevators. Of course, you climbed every day. Buckets of water, baskets of food, children, everything went up and down. On tired backs, there was no plumbing. Water came from public fountains, carried in jars, sloshing as you walked. Chamber pots were common, emptied when convenient, sometimes over the edge. The insulae were not quiet places. You'd hear the neighbors above you, boiling lentils. The child next door, crying in the night. The creak of footsteps at odd hours. Voices from the street. Below vendors. Arguments. Laughter. In summer, the air grew thick. Not just with heat, but with the scent of too many people living too close. Oil smoke. Body, sweat, pickled fish, and over it all, the ever-present temps of dust and time. Fires were frequent. A single overturned oil lamp could consume an entire building before help arrived. The Romans had a firefighting service, the vigils, but even they were limited in what they could do. There were laws. Eventually, emperors tried to limit how tall insulae could be built first, 70 Roman feet, then 60. But still, they rose. Because land in Rome was scarce and profit unrelenting. Many insulae collapsed. They were overburdened, weakened by rain, gnawed by time. Some fell slowly, with cracks and groans. Others fell fast. There are few ruins left today. The grand structures, the baths, the temples, the amphitheaters are what remain, but the insulae, they were swept away. And yet, archaeologists have found traces. On the Aventine Hill, beneath modern apartments, lie remnants of Roman ones, fragments of frescoed walls, charred wood beams, simple clay oil lamps, still darkened with soot. In Ostia, the ancient port city, better preserved examples survive. You can still see the layout: small rooms clustered around inner courtyards, with communal latrines and corner stairwells, shops below, lives above. And in these traces, we glimpse something profound. The Romans weren't all emperors and senators. Most were people who lived in buildings not built to last, who lit a single lamp at night and hoped the stairs would hold. They cooked small meals, mended worn tunics, tucked children into shared beds, and listened each night to the sound of the city breathing around them. We may not know their names, but we walk in the echoes of their footsteps. Now, let the scene shift once more. You are still in Rome, but no longer in the shadowy tenements or dusty fields. This time, you find yourself behind tall walls, among quiet colonnades, where the air smells faintly of pressed laurel and imported cinnamon. This is not a place of need, but of order and of quiet control. You are now a Roman matronia, married woman of high social status, a keeper of household dignity, wealth, and legacy. The floor beneath your bare feet is smooth mosaic tiles, cool in the morning air. The house is still. You wake early, but not to labor. Servants are already moving quietly through the atrium. One is stoking the small fire for breakfast preparations. Another is tending the small fountain, gently brushing fallen petals from the water's surface. You sit as your hair is combed carefully, deliberately. The style matters. A patrician matron must project gravitas, a kind of elegant seriousness. No curls fall out of place. No pins are visible. Your stolitha, traditional dress of respectable Roman women, has been laid out. It is long, flowing, of fine wool, dyed in subtle purples. You adjust the fabric over your shoulder, just so. Jewelry is modest, but meaningful, perhaps a family ring, a necklace gifted from your husband, or small earrings passed down from your mother. You break your fast, lightly some figs, a crust of soft bread, and watered wine. The household steward approaches with news. The wool merchant will visit at midday. The cook needs your approval for the evening's meal plan. Your younger son needs to be reminded to recite his Homer. You nod gently. These things are your domain? Unlike the men of your class, you do not attend the forum or participate in politics. But you are not idle. You oversee the running of a complex household. There are slaves to manage, accounts to monitor, and reputation to maintain. Reputation, in this world, is everything. A patrician woman is rarely seen in public, and when she is, it is with an air of composure and discretion. Even laughter must be graceful. Later in the morning, a friend arrives. She is carried in a litter by 4 men, her sandals untouched by Rome's dusty streets. You greet her in the peristyle garden. The air is warm. The shade of fig trees dapples your robes. You speak of poetry, of the latest marriage alliances, of a senator's daughter whose behavior has sparked quiet disapproval. The tone is soft, but the implications sharp. You both understand the rules. Later still, you attend to the shrine in the household. You offer incense to the household spirit, small terracotta figures whose faces have grown smooth by age and reverence. You whisper a blessing for your husband's health, your children's futures, and perhaps silently for yourself. In the late afternoon, the house is still again. The stone walls protect you from the heat. You sit by a small window, embroidering linen with fine thread, while a slave girl reads from a scroll of Virgil in the corner. Her voice is quiet, almost like a lullaby. Your husband returns as the sky softens to amber. He kisses your cheek lightly. He is tired of debates, clients, and the endless undercurrents of Roman politics. Together, you dine, reclining, as tradition allows. The food is elaborate. Fish with herbs, honey dates, a delicately spiced stew. You do not eat much. A matron eats with restraint. Always. Later in the triclinium, musicians play softly. You listen, you do not dance. Your daughters sit nearby, learning how to sit, how to speak, how to vanish, while still being seen. When night falls, the house dims gradually. Oil lamps glow with a golden hush. The courtyard's fountain continues its slow, trickling song. You return to your chamber. A slave carefully removes the pins from your hair. You close your eyes as the last one slides free. And for a moment, you are not a matron, not a symbol, not a name. You are simply tired. You lie down on your low bed, your hands resting across your stomach. Outside, a breeze stirs the ivy on the outer wall. Inside, all is still. Tomorrow will be the same, and the day after. And the day after that? In this life, you are not just a woman. You are the shape of tradition, draped in fabric, holding a home together.